Hey, welcome to Church 180 Online. Hey there, welcome to Church 180 Online with us this week. My name is Tony, and I'm the lead pastor here, and I'm excited that you decided to join us for just this online recording and online church this week. We're in week 3 of our series, A Generous Christmas, where we are just going through a passage out of the book of Isaiah, written 722 years before Jesus was ever even born. And in this verse, it just says, "For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace." And what we're saying is that's Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. And right there within that verse is so much. It is the Christmas story. Jesus coming to earth, being born as a baby, but then the continuation of that Christmas story is what we're talking about. And what we've kind of said the whole time is that Jesus being born is the greatest gift that you and I could ever receive. And we're going to get to why that is a little bit more towards the end of this message today. But it's the greatest gift that we could ever receive. And what we're challenging you and anybody who tunes in, and what we're challenging you is that because in Jesus we received the greatest gift ever, we want to in turn be like Jesus in being generous in giving this Christmas. So we've kind of just shared with you, like, we're not messing around this year. Like, we're not messing around. And in my family, like, we are, we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we have given significantly and sacrificially already to this generous Christmas gift. Like, we're looking to raise a little over $12,000 for 9 specific causes that are in our local community, and one that really has just impacted Church 180 and Chris Hornbrook and Trailhead Church off in Montana. Like, we wouldn't be who we are without him and them and their vision for church planting in so many different ways. So I'm excited this week. We have two new causes that we're going to highlight. So far, we've looked at Chris, we've looked at Ephraim, we've looked at James Sandoval, we've looked at Belicia, all people very near and dear to our heart. And this week, we're going to hear from a couple of other people. We're gonna hear from Monica Salinas, who is a single mom who has a small business called Bloom Nutrition. and she uses the profits around this time of year to just give back the profits from her business for this time of year to just give back to families in need in the local community. And we just said, like she was nominated, we want to get behind what she's doing, and we want to get behind what she's doing. And we know for $900 we could help her put together gift baskets for 3 more families this Christmas to make their like people in need, to make their Christmas much more meaningful. And so you're going to hear from Monica right now.
So, born and raised in San Diego, and stay-at-home mom of 2. And so I have a home nutrition club where I get to serve healthy smoothies, energizing teas to my community, as well as I'm a wellness coach. So I, of course, have like the gym side and help people start and continue on a wellness journey. So at the beginning of the pandemic, so that's when my home business started, March of 2020. I was looking for a way to continue impacting my community. The gym had shut down, and of course everybody around me was struggling and going through hardship. And so I wanted a way to be able to continue impacting them and to bring them just a little bit of joy, maybe a smile, just something to brighten their day. Through the hardship that everybody was facing. So that's when I started the Home Nutrition Club. And for me, it wasn't just about being able to serve them, a drink. Yes, like it's a healthy meal and it's gonna, make their tummies happy, but I wanted a way to be able to just brighten somebody's day. Last year was my first year doing what I do in Christmas. And so what I did, just to go back a little bit, was take all of my earnings from December and then put that towards gifts, things the family needed, not just gifts for the kids, but things for the parents, and just things to help, brighten their holiday, give them a little bit of love and cheer. I took all of my profit, it went towards that. People in the community nominated other families in the community, and the generosity of Church 180 is just going to help me impact more families. I already have 6 families nominated, which is amazing, and they're all going through some type of hardship, whether it's family loss, income loss, death, illness, and it brings me so much emotion because when people nominate them, they always give me the reason why they're nominating them. And when I read those stories, it just gives me a little bit more fire to continue doing what I do and looking for more ways to help impact their lives. It was about 10 years ago. My daughter was 5 years old at the time, more like 11 years actually. She's 16 now. Living at my mom's house, single mom, and a anonymous donation showed up at my door full of everything needed for Thanksgiving. I still have no idea, where it came from, who they were. I just made a promise to them that when I was able to, I would do the same for people in my community. And so when I started, the Herbalife opportunity, it just brought so many blessings into my life that I had that feeling of I need to share all of these blessings. So that's where it started. Last year, I had 3 families, and so all my earnings that I had collected, I put everything to it. So it was a little over $300 per family. And when the families are nominated, I get a little bit more info about their needs and what the kids like, maybe their ages, and I go shopping for them. So I get things according to maybe their favorite character, or if they like sports, and I'll do shopping for the kids based on the information that I have. And then for the parents, last year I did gas gift card, just something that might bring the parents a smile, a little bit extra cheer. So that's why I asked for a reason why they're nominating them, just to get an idea of what they might need. And then I also did cookie kits, and I just think it's an amazing way for them to build beautiful memories, around all the hardships and things that they're going through.
Awesome. And also this week you're going to hear from Tracy Owens. And Tracy is one of our very own. been a leader on one of our hospitality teams, but she also, in her retirement from the U.S. Navy, she works for Support the Enlisted Project, where they specifically support lower-ranking enlisted families with some of their basic needs in this life. Because we know that it can be really tricky for some of the lower-ranking military families with young kids and everything to have all the supplies and all the products that they need. So what we want to do through Support the Enlisted is we want to help 20 families receive a ton of diapers and a ton of baby wipes, and we can do that for $1,000. So we're hoping to get $1,000 to Tracy, so we can do that. And so you're going to hear from Tracy right now on what she does and how our generosity can make an impact.
Hi, I'm Tracy Owens, retired Navy veteran and programs manager for Support the Enlisted Project. At STEP, we work with military families who are experiencing a financial crisis. A financial crisis would be loss of a basic life need, facing eviction, repossession, utility disconnection, or maybe they can't put food on the table or diapers on the baby. We can step in and help with that. We provide education and counseling, and if needed, a grant to help them out of their circumstance and get them back on their feet. We also have a warehouse where our military families can come in and get the items that they need to help offset the cost of some other bills. So we never want a family to have to choose between paying their electric bill or putting diapers on their baby. Your generosity this holiday season will help us restock needed items in our warehouse for our military kiddos. We would like to thank you for your generosity in helping us restock our warehouse with needed baby items. These essential items will help our military families get the items that they need.
I want to encourage you this year to give significantly, significant money, okay? And I want to encourage you to give sacrificially as well. Like your Christmas, like my intent, if I do my job correctly and inspire you to give, your Christmas should look a little bit different this year because of the way that you've sacrificed and given above and beyond to, as we talked about last week, see the governance of Jesus ushered in to our local community and world. That's the kind of impact that we want to make, but it's not going to happen when we give insignificantly. It's only going to happen when we give significantly. And to give significantly, we've got to give sacrificially. So I want to encourage you and inspire you to do that this Christmas, as my family's already done. We are already, only a few, we have a full week left of giving, and it's kind of getting crunch time, but we've already raised over $5,000. We've got a little ways to go, but we've already raised over $5,000, which is incredible. So I want to encourage you to do that this Christmas, because for unto us a child has been born, and for unto us a son has been given. We've got the greatest gift, so we want to in turn give back. So we're going to jump into the back half of that passage this week, and we're just going to tackle the first part of it, and then next week we're going to conclude the series with talking about Jesus being everlasting Father and Prince of Peace. But for today, we're going to talk about Wonderful Counselor, and we're going to talk about Mighty God for a few minutes. And I think it's worth mentioning before we jump in anymore that these names were never meant to be like the names of Jesus. They were more attributes of his character that we would see in his humanity, but then also in his godliness and foreverness and godliness. So today I want to dig into this idea of Wonderful Counselor and Mighty God. So let's just jump in as we go. So we are being counseled, right now we are being counseled, and we are in need of good counseling, okay? So right now, in your life, you are being counseled, but you are in need of good counsel, okay? So Genesis chapter 3 in the beginning of the Bible kind of highlights the counsel that we are being ushered into on a day in and day out basis. This is like the second page of the Bible, but it's the account of Adam and Eve in the garden, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the story, but I know a lot of us are. But if you're not, it's a story of Adam and Eve in the garden, and God had created man and women in His image, and He had told them, like, okay, here's this big beautiful garden, and you are free to eat from the fruit of any of the trees except for the one in the middle. And so then the story goes that Satan comes as a serpent, as a snake, and says, "Hey, did God say you couldn't eat from any tree?" Twisting the words and twisting them just a little bit, because it's like, no, God said you could eat from every tree except for this one, and Satan says, no, did God say you couldn't eat from any tree? And then he goes off and says, well, surely if you eat from that tree that's in the middle, you're not going to die. Like, you're not going to, like, it's not like, you'd be okay. And once again, twist the words that's going on. And so, and the scriptures are very clear. It says that they saw the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden. They wanted what they couldn't have, or wanted what they were told they couldn't have. And they saw that the fruit that was growing from that tree was desirable, and it was, and that it would be good for gaining wisdom. See, Satan had told them, as the serpent, that their eyes would be opened and they would become more like God, and that they would gain this wisdom. So they took the counsel of Satan and they ate the fruit. See, here's the thing, okay, that we know about counselors, okay? Good counselors. Good counselors help you to gain wisdom, right? Good counselors help you to gain wisdom. And to them, this seemed like the wisdom that they wanted to gain, but it didn't work out so great for them or for us, did it? It just didn't. That we hear that's where sin entered the world. We learn that's where sin entered the world, and that there was a curse, and that as a result of that sin, we live these fractured and broken lives, every single one of us, and that we will eventually, at least physically, die. For those of us who believe and trust and put our faith and hope and trust in Jesus, we won't spiritually die, but these bodies are gonna die. And that's the result of this sin that we're talking about. And to them, to eat from this fruit in this garden seemed like wisdom that they wanted to gain, but it didn't work out so well for them, right? See, and make no mistake, okay? You and I are being counseled very much every single day in the same way, whether it be the TV that we watch, the shows that we watch, the music that we listen to. These are really big ticket items that help. We oftentimes try to think. I remember hearing this study a few years ago about men in Mexico specifically, and that's where the study was taken. I'm sure it has to do with men everywhere, but it was like they were trying to do some study, like the government was trying to figure out how to have more literate males. And so they tried all these campaigns, spent all this money to do all this stuff to get more guys to be able to read and enjoy reading and the whole thing, and like zilch, absolutely nothing. But then they figured out, okay, what if we take one of the hottest sitcoms, what if we take one of the hottest TV shows, and we portray the lead character as someone who is intellectual and somebody who reads, and literacy rates skyrocketed. I mean, it's just crazy to see the power that TV, the shows that we watch, the stuff that we listen to, have over our lives, mainly because they are counseling us in what we should and what we shouldn't do. It happens in social media, right? It happens in the social media that we consume. Like we see, people portraying a good image, or we see people saying something, whether it be about whatever, and we are counseled in the moment. It happens to the podcast that we listen to. We go to podcasts to be counseled. I know I do. I go to podcasts to be counseled. I go to books to be counseled. I go to friends. I go to family. I go to colleagues. All these things are constantly barraging us with a form of counseling. And see, and the scary thing is that there appears to be a form of wisdom to this world. And I'm not saying all that stuff's bad. I'm not saying everything is like Satan as a slippery serpent in the garden. But and they're like, I'm reminded of this passage, Proverbs chapter 14, verse 12, that says, "There's a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death." There's a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death. And what we see about this passage is that Jesus is the wonderful counselor, and there's all kinds of forms of counseling that are coming in at us from all different angles. And there we have the tendency to think that some things can be right, but know that in the end it doesn't lead to where we want it to go at all. And see, good counselors, they help us gain wisdom. See, good counselors help us to make realizations or understand things in a way that we're able to make the appropriate changes in our lives to get. See, I love Wayne Cordero, who's a Hawaiian pastor, and a guy who wrote a book called The Divine Mentor that just changed my life 12, 13 years ago now. Maybe 15, I don't know. And he always says in life you have two teachers, okay? This is what he talks about in the book. In life you have two teachers. You have wisdom and you have consequences. See, good counselors help you to gain wisdom. But in life, we oftentimes have two teachers. We have wisdom and consequences. And in our reality, we aren't wise enough. Like, we're not, we've talked about this at Church 180 before. Like, wisdom is not just knowing things. Wisdom is understanding in a way that we're able to act upon it. And wisdom is so much more than just knowing. It's knowing and doing together. And we aren't wise enough. We don't know enough and do enough to be the children, parents, spouse, employees, bosses, coworkers, etc. that we need to be in this world. And we can either acquire that wisdom through gaining wisdom, or we can either learn through gaining wisdom or suffering consequences. See, but the thing that he talks about so oftentimes is you can only, Wayne Cordero talks about in the book is like consequences are kind of like running your face into a brick wall. You can only do that so many times before you run your life into the ground and you run amok completely. And see, God wants to help you acquire the wisdom that you need for this life through the wonderful counselor, Jesus. And see, Satan wants to subtly counsel you, whether it be through TV or social media. Or, I don't know what your flavor of getting counsel is, but Satan is at work in the counsel that we receive through culture, and ultimately wants us to suffer consequences and make a mess out of our lives. So I want to talk just briefly real quick about how Jesus counsels us to gain wisdom. Okay, so I want to talk about 3 ways that Jesus counsels us to gain this wisdom that we need to be the kind of people that we need to be. The number one is his Spirit. One way that Jesus counsels us is in his Spirit. I love John chapter 14, right before Jesus ascended into heaven. He said, guys, and he's talking to his 12 disciples, he said, guys, it's for your good that I'm gonna be gone. I'm gonna leave. And they're sad, and and they're like, well, like we look at it and we're like, for your good? Like, what are you talking about? And and like, what could possibly be better than to be with Jesus, like 24/7, to be with Jesus all the time? Like, what in the world could be better? And he says, guys, it's for your good that I'm gonna go away. And he says this, because when I go, I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper, so that he may be with you forever. The helper is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it does not see him or know him. But you know him, because he remains with you and will be in you. And see, this word helper, it's such a robust word. But one of the forms, or one of the meanings of this word helper, is God's going to help us in so many different ways. But it's this idea of an advocate. Like, that's one translation that you see, and think of like a courtroom and someone who advocates for you in life. But another meaning behind this robust word is just that of an advisor, that of a counselor, that of someone who's going to lead you into, helpers, the Spirit of truth, that will lead us into truth. I mean, Jesus goes on a couple of chapters later, and he says, man, this Spirit, like this helper, is going to convict us of the sin in our lives. Whenever we have this, like God's Spirit, and we stray off course, that there's going to be this conviction that we experience that's designed not to help us not to make us feel shame, but to gently lead us back to the course that Jesus has for us. And see, that conviction is counseling. That the way that the Spirit intercedes with us in our life is a form of counseling and getting us on the right track in life. So one of the ways that Jesus, the wonderful counselor, counsels us is through his Spirit. Another way is through his word. Okay? The scriptures. I mean, we believe that the scriptures were inspired by the Spirit of God. And, and Paul talks about in 2 Timothy that it's useful for rebuking and correcting and teaching and training us to be more godly. And so that whenever, like we believe that whenever we open up the scriptures, we're not only just opening up some ancient book, but that we're opening up a living word, like the words of God that his Spirit breathed. Like it's like a breath on a page, that his Spirit breathed this into action. Whenever that word intersects with our lives, man, sweet stuff happens and God begins to counsel us. We believe that. And the third way that I believe God really, Jesus wants to counsel us is through his Spirit, through his word, and through his community, okay? There is counsel that you will receive from brothers and sisters in Church 180 that are really words from God. It's God using his people to counsel his people. It just is. But one of the things that Wayne Cordeiro said, as well as he said, hey, there's two pains, though, to this life as well. And I would call it this. There's two pains to gaining this wisdom that we're talking about. There's two pains to gaining this wisdom from his Spirit, his word, and his community. And it's this. The two pains are discipline or regret. Discipline or regret. See, gaining wisdom from Jesus, it takes discipline. It takes discipline to sit at his feet and to learn from his Spirit. It takes discipline to have a robust prayer life, to be in continual communication with God, and to listen to what the impressions that he puts on our heart and the counsel that he wants to give us for our lives. It takes discipline to feel that conviction and to have the courage to follow through and with what we believe God's Spirit's convicting us to do and counseling us to do. It takes discipline to do that. It takes discipline to be counseled by God through his word, because it takes a plan and it takes time and it takes effort and it takes energy to, for me, it's that time in the morning where I wake up, I pour a cup of coffee and I sit down and I go through my Bible reading plan. And I try to be disciplined to get in his word and let him counsel me through that. That takes discipline. It takes discipline in being part of his community, doesn't it? See, especially coming back after COVID, where so many of us have been in isolation for so long. And it's just like, man, I don't know if I'm ready for that whole people part of my life again. I'm kind of happy with the way things are. I mean, I'm not happy, but and it just takes discipline to branch off in community. It takes discipline to build relationships and specifically deep enough relationships with which you can receive the counsel of God through those relationships. And I just want to encourage you right now. We're going to be launching some groups, some small group kind of workshop stuff in January. And I would love for you to have the discipline to sign up for one of those and to be around his community and to receive the counsel of God, not only through his word, not only through his Spirit, but through his community in your life. But for the sake of our message today, we're going to move on to name number 2. Mighty God is what it talks about. And this one will be a little bit more brief, but I was kind of thinking about this name, Mighty God, or this attribute of the character of Jesus that we see from this passage. And it made me think of the F-18s that fly over our house all the time. Because we live right by Brownfield Airport, and the F-18s from the Marines fly over our house, and they fly up to Camp Pendleton quite regularly. And you see the F-18s, they're one of the aircraft that the military has that can, I haven't really heard it, but that can break the sound barrier, okay? And geek out with me for just a little bit, because I did a little bit of research this week on the sound barrier and the speed of sound, and and then we'll progress. But did you know the speed of sound can travel 1 mile in 4.7 seconds? I mean, we thought Usain Bolt was fast, but 1 mile, 4.7 seconds. But here's the deal. Sound, the sound is actually a turtle compared to light. Okay, like light is like the cheetah of the animal kingdom, and like literally, like I think it's actually even worse. But if you're to like picture for a second, like I don't know why, it helps me. But if you're to picture like a turtle and a cheetah lined up, and the gun goes off, and like they both take off, like be like, you know what I mean? And because light, okay, get this, light travels at 186,000 miles per second. Or if you were to make a race out of sound and light. At the time that sound has covered 1 mile, light would have covered 875,895 miles. 875,895 times faster than sound. And so track with me for a second, okay? Because I'm going somewhere. Our solar system, whether you count Pluto as a planet, I don't know where we're at with that anymore. I think it's not, right? Okay. So the 8 planets that we have, our solar system, is approximately 1.5 light years long. Okay, so take the speed of light, okay, 186,000 miles per second, and make that travel 186,000 miles per second for 1.5 years. And you will travel approximately 100 million miles, and you will have covered from Mercury to the 8th planet, because I thought it was Pluto. But our galaxy, okay, that's our solar system. Now, our solar system is a very small part of our galaxy, and our galaxy is now 100,000 light years in distance, is what the scientists, estimate, is that our galaxy, the Milky Way, is 100,000 light years in distance. And scientists conservatively estimate that there are billions of galaxies. So we are on one planet in one solar system in one galaxy of billions of galaxies, to which we don't even know the extent of it all. And when I think about Jesus, okay, as the mighty God, I'm just reminded of Job chapter 38, verses 19 through 33. And I'm just going to read that for us. Starting in verse 19, it says this, what is the way to abode of light? And where does darkness reside? Can you take them to their places? And he's speaking to Job, because Job at this time is wondering why he's experiencing so much suffering, and he's questioning God on so many things, like so many of us do all the time. And God responds and he says, do you know the path to their dwelling? Can you take them to their places? Do you know the path to their dwellings of light and darkness? Surely you know, for you were already born. You've lived so many years. This is God being sarcastic at the time. Have you rendered the storehouses of snow, or seen the storehouses of hail, which I reserve for times of trouble, for days of war and battle? What is the way to the place where the lightning is dispersed, or the place where the east winds are scattered over the earth? Who cuts a channel for the torrents of rain, and a path for the thunderstorms, to water a land where no one lives, to an uninhabited desert, to satisfy a desolate wasteland and make it sprout with grass? Does the rain have a father? Who fathers the drops of dew? From whose womb comes the ice? Who gives birth to the frost from the heavens? When the waters become hard as stone, when the surface of the deep is frozen. And then he says this, verse 31, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Constellations. He's talking about stars. He's talking about astronomy. He's talking about space. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? And can you loosen Orion's belt? Can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons, or lead out the bear with its cubs? Do you know the laws of the heavens? And can you set up God's dominion over the earth? See, and what we see here is just God responding with like a man, like, you just don't get how big I am. You don't understand the depths and the lengths of who I am. And see, we look at this passage in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, and Jesus, this baby who's prophesied to be born, but who we then learn and discover is going to start his ministry at age 30, and he's going to do ministry for 3 years, and that ministry is going to change the course of history forever. And we know that in this ministry he had 12 disciples, and that 3 of these disciples were kind of his inner circle, and that one, specifically one, refers to himself often as the one that Jesus loved, and that was John, who, tries to give us the inside track in his gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that he was special, and that he had this intimate relationship with Jesus, where they were good buds. And John, he writes this. It's in Revelation chapter 1, and he writes an account of seeing the resurrected Jesus after it all. So I need you to trace with me. Like, I know we're in a Christmas series for a second, but I need you to trace with me for a second, because we're covering the whole gamut of history, right? We're talking about 722 years before Jesus, being prophesied as a baby, being born of a virgin, and then we've covered the life of Jesus a little bit, and now we're looking back at the Apostle John, who was with and walked and talked and considered himself to be loved, the one that Jesus loved. And in verse 12, he gives us this image of the resurrected Jesus after it's all said and done. It says, I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. When I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands, and among the lampstands were someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe, reaching down to his feet, and with a gold sash around his chest, and the hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze, glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and coming out of his mouth was a sharp double-edged sword. His face was like the sun, shining in all its brilliance. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand on me, said, do not be afraid. I'm the first and the last. I'm the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and hell, of death and Hades. And I need you to focus in on that fact that this good friend of Jesus, while he was a human being, still fully God, but a human being, walked and talked, called himself the one that Jesus loved. But when he finally saw the resurrected version of Jesus, the mighty God that we are talking about, he thought that his life was going to be over. He didn't oh, hey, what's going on? Let's give a hug. He went, and he just fell right on his face, thinking he was going to die because of the mightiness of God. And the thing I need you to hear in this mighty God means that Jesus is always victorious. He's always victorious. See, I'm just reminded this week of, I got the chance a long time ago to coach 7th grade football. And so it was a blast at the town that Kelsey and I used to live in Western Illinois, called Beardstown, and I was a part of the coaching staff and coached 7th grade football. But we always had a blast watching the game right after ours, the 8th grade game, and because we had this kid who immigrated from Ghana, and so this kid named Bernard, okay, and I don't know how else to put it other than the fact that Bernard was like a fully grown man in an 8th grader body, or a 8th grader in like a man's body, and he was quick. Like, he would have been the star on the varsity team if he was allowed to play in high school, but he was an 8th grader, and we just had a blast watching him because we didn't lose. Like, we couldn't lose. Literally, it was like, hey, do you think anybody's going to get a tackle on Bernard tonight? Like, do you think anybody's going to be able to because if he got the ball, he could score. Like, he had that ability. I mean, it was to the point too, on defense, it was starting to get laughable. Like, we didn't know what to do a lot. Luckily, I wasn't the coach. We didn't know what to do a lot of times because literally other teams' parents would be coming down to their coaches and pulling their kids out of the game because they didn't want their kid to play against Bernard. He was so good because he was always victorious in what he did. And I say that to say this is as much as Bernard was always victorious, we have a God who is mighty. And his might means that he is always victorious. And one of the cool things is that he has allowed you and he's allowed me to carry his victory in this life. He's allowed us. He said, man, you put your faith, you put your hope, you put your trust in me, you put your life in my hands, and you can carry my victory. And I think the most profound victory that God allows us to carry because he is mighty. And I put it this way, the most profound victory of a mighty God is that over your sin. That over your sin. And that's, there's victory that he wants to give us and let us carry in so many different other areas of life. But I think the most profound one is that of our sin. So much so that it confounded people. There's this story in Mark chapter 2 where all these people were crowded around in this house listening to Jesus teach. And sure enough, they start to hear like some rumblings from the roof. And then I'm sure like some dirt and straw or whatever, they built their roofs out of started to fall down. And sure enough, they're like, what the heck's going on? And they started to see a little hole in the roof. And then the hole got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they could see a couple of guys and another guy that couldn't walk. And they started to lower this guy who was lame down into this room to be with the rest of the people. And I'm sure the owner of the house and they're like ticked and whatever, like, what do you put a hole in my roof, like what is going on? And Jesus looks at the man and he says, because of your faith your sins are forgiven. And this just floored everybody in the room. Everybody's like, well, wait, hold on a second. Because the guy's like, I didn't come to get my sins forgiven. I came for you to help me to walk. And the religious leaders were ticked. They're like, who do you think you are? Only God can forgive sins. And Jesus, looking at their intention and looking at the man who he just said your sins are forgiven, he says, hey, which is easier, do you think, to say that your sins are forgiven or to get up and walk? And I don't know if he left much time for them to answer, but he says, so that you'll believe that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. So that you will believe this, I now tell you to get up, pick up your mat, and walk home. And he did it. He did it. He got up, he walked out, and he walked home that night praising Jesus. And I tell you that story to say one of the most profound things about a mighty God is that he has the power to forgive you. And that forgiveness leads to your salvation and being made right with God, and for you to be able to, with your life, carry his victory and carry it home. See, we're going to move into a time of communion in this next song, and I just want to invite you to get some drink and get some food. And the drink represents the blood of Jesus that was poured out on that cross for your forgiveness, and the food represents the body of Jesus that was broken on the cross for your forgiveness. So Jesus, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you that you are a wonderful counselor and a mighty God. May we celebrate the forgiveness of sins that we have in you. Amen.
Jesus, my living water, name above all names, Lamb of God, new life giver, you conquered the grave, and I don't have to wonder where my hope is coming from. Live my There is freedom wherever you are, and I can see it. You're the light in the dark. You are, you are, you are. Oh, there is power when I say your name, and I can feel it. 'Cause you're breaking the chains. You are, you are, you are. I know what I'm reaching for. I know what I'm reaching for. I'm reaching for you. I'm reaching for you. Oh, I know what I'm living for. I know what I'm living for. I'm living for you. I'm living for you. Oh, I know what I'm reaching for. I know what I'm reaching for. I'm reaching for you. I'm reaching for you. Oh, I know what I'm living for. I know what I'm living for. I'm living for you. I'm living for you. I'm living for you.